Shri Gaur Nityananda ki jai. Shri Gaur Radha Madhava ki jai. Rauji Gopal ki jai. Shri Guru Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sannyasi Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Morning. So, by popular demand, I'm going to read a little something from the book I'm working on at present, and then we'll comment on that. This book is entitled Friends Forever. Sakyarati in Uttam Bhakti. And it consists of 2 cantos, so this is from the first, actually the second chapter of the second canto, which is a Leela narrative based on the Prakat Leela as it is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. That means the Prakat Leela described in Srimad Bhagavatam centered on Sakyarati, that section. That begins chapter 12 up through 15, 16, and some parts of 18. And the first canto of the book then is describing the tattva of this particular type of sacred aesthetic rapture or rasa, and that covers about five chapters. So that's where we are anyway. And this is from the beginning of the first chapter of the second canto, second chapter actually, but it's where the Leela narrative begins. I've begun the second canto with a philosophical chapter about the nature of Leela before we enter into it a retelling of it, with you, if you will, with segues into the philosophical, theological implications. And of course, the idea of our practice is to hear such things, having understood from the first canto much about the tattva, the constituents of bhakti rasa, the poetic constituents as it is expressed in poetry. That is, it's not that that poetry gives rise to Sakya rasa, or that one has to be a poet to taste bhakti rasa. And this is one of the principal differences between bhakti rasa and the secular rasa, or aesthetic theory of India in the arts, drama, music, poetry, and so forth. It's perhaps not the best word to use to describe it as secular theory, because India at that time was hardly secular. It would be hard to find a secularist. They were a very marginalized group. But there were many, of course, within the umbrella of Hinduism, many different religious ideas. And one of the prominent ones, of course, has been and even continues to be to some extent, although we're whittling away at that, the work of my Guru Maharaj in particular, as important in this regard, Therefore his pranam nirvisesh sunyavadi paschachade satarne. This is of course in reference to the monism of Shankar and its popularity. Before Prabhupada came to America, Hinduism, Indology I should say, 95% at least of the perspectives on Hinduism was that it culminates in Advaita Vedanta. So he did much to change that focus. So when you see other articles about Vishishta Dvaita, Dvaita, Achintya Veda, and so forth, if you know the history, then you're going to appreciate our Guru Maharaj's hand in that, very much following, as he liked to think of himself, the mission of Bhakti Vinod. He used to say, my mission is the mission of Bhakti Vinod. So to put it in the language of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, the vision came in Bhakti Vinod. It was given shape by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada took it all over the world. And he was very keen on having his books introduced to the academic community, and as much as they weren't academic in nature, and as much as in some respects he didn't dot all his I's and cross all of his T's, so to speak. After all, Prabhupada's books were spoken into a dictaphone in the middle of the night while his disciples slept. I remember once having a room in the guest house of the Krishna Balaram temple that had a window in it from which one could look out and see the upstairs veranda of Prabhupada. And so I had the good fortune to stay there, and I used to get up in the middle of the night and look out and there watch Prabhupada doing he was writing, but into the dictaphone he was speaking. And then, of course, what was dictated by him was transcribed by his disciples, and then at his request it was edited with an idea to bring it up to Western standards in terms of the English, and to package it in terms of Western standards of packaging, which is probably the greatest contribution of the Western world to the rest of the world, packaging. So, and then the finished product would be handed to him in a printed volume. In other words, it's not that Prabhupada wrote it, he spoke it, then it was transcribed, then it was edited. Maybe there were some questions here and there, but for the most part, he never reviewed the work after speaking it. He didn't have the time to do that, because by the time he woke up, then there was a mission all over the world that he had to deal with, and so on. And he had his own life, his practice, and so forth. And he trusted his disciples. He thought, I've given them Krishna Nam, and it's working wonders on them. So he had very much trust in his students, and that doesn't mean they didn't fail him in some regards, or that their editing was perfect. It's something to consider. Perfect book may require perfect editing. But as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, no book is perfect. I cited Bhagavatam itself the other day, speaking about itself. It's the pen of Vyasa, but I believe these are the words of Nard. So the Nard Bhagavat is inside of the Sukadeva Bhagavat and so forth. So the speakers and hearers, inquirers within speakers and inquirers, such as the nature of the text. So at a point, Nard appears to Vyasa and tells him to write the Bhagavatam. This is the Nard Bhagavatam. He heard the Bhagavatam from Brahma. Brahma heard it from Krishna. Nard gave it to Vyasa. Vyasa took it and composed it. So he's rewriting, I guess you could say, what he heard from, the essence of what he heard from Nard. And in the text I said it, Yat tad visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratislokam abhadavati. That there's an urgency, as Prabhupada's books very much, the spirit of the Bhagavad was very much conveyed by him, a sense of urgency now. Go back to Godhead now. Now is the time. Very strong sense of immediacy. The issue is at hand. This is how he, led his life. And he wanted to compile do the whole of the Bhagavatam. He had, when he first came to America with the three volumes, I believe, of the first canto, he shortly thereafter had a heart attack, and whether he would be able to continue was questionable. And that loomed over him for the entire balance of his time amongst us. And so he was writing with some sense of urgency, and of course trying to convey to us his own sense of urgency to pursue the ideals of Srimad Bhagavatam. But the text then says, Yasmin pratislokam abhadavati, that there may be some irregularities in the composition, in the grammar, but we are requested to overlook such editorial discrepancies and not let that cause us to find fault, but to identify with the essential message and, of course, take it up. I mean, it's a beautiful book. It's a rasa shastra. It's a poetic text, the Bhagavatam. It speaks in all of the voices that the sacred text of the Hindus speak in. They speak in the voice of a king. Do this. Bring that. Offer this. They speak in the voice of a friend who says, let's take a walk. You want an answer? You have a question? Let's take a walk and talk about it. Tell a story. Puranas. Vedas like a king. Puranas like a friend. And the kavya, the poet, these poetic texts, like a lover. So all these voices, all three of them are found in the Bhagavatam. Another reason for us to agree with Sri Jiva Goswami as to its being well, as the Bhagavad itself says as well, the mature work of Vyasa, his most mature work, final contribution. And so, if we let us look at the perspective of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he met Ishwar Puri in Nadia, and Puriji was invited to his house for lunch, Ishwar Puriji, he took the opportunity to present his book. Was it Krishna Lilamrita? Book that he was writing to the young Nimai Pandit. Nimai Pandit was, of course, Vishvambar Mishra, his formal name, from a Brahmin family and a Vaishnava family. But in his youth, of course, he was only a nominal Vaishnava. This is something I think that the Guru Kulis can bond with him on. Guru Kulis are, I don't know how many there are in Poland, but of this brand, but in America we have a fair amount of them. Students, they're disciples of Prabhupada's disciples who are in the Guru Kulas, who they're like, a lot of them are like devotees, but they're not devotees. They're kind of like like they like bhakti, but they don't, not all of them of course, but many of them, they don't know the tattva. The kind of thing that Bhakti Vinod Thakur was addressing in Bengal. So many people born as Vaishnavas, chanting and smoking and other things, and not knowing the philosophy so well. Or they may know a version of the philosophy that they received from their parents who didn't understand it that well, and maybe that's one of the reasons some of them are not that interested in it, because it's a very, very interesting worldview. It's very rich and deep, and you can enter into it and with good guidance and never come out again. So they're kind of nominal Vaishnavas. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a nominal Vaishnava in the context of the Leela. Everybody liked him except the Vaishnavas, who liked him but had to act as if they didn't, and questioned their own liking of him. I like him so much, but I shouldn't. He's not a Vaishnava. He's wasting his time in all this pedantry and scholasticism and so forth. He should be a Vaishnava. If only he would be a Vaishnava. You should be a Vaishnava. And they go away thinking, if only he was a Vaishnava, then everything would be perfect. So before he became a Vaishnava, before he began to manifest himself as a Vaishnava, of course he had to meet his guru, Ishwar Puri. But he was known as a Pandit at the time, so Puriji had a book he'd been writing, and he said, Pandit, young Pandit he was, young, but see the measure of his renown as a scholar, as a Pandit. His nickname was Nimai Pandit, and Ishwar Puri, who was quite a scholar himself, thought, what will the boy let him read it? He may find some grammatical errors, some error in the poetics of the book, and so forth. Doesn't recall if by that time he had defeated Keshava Kashmiri. You know the story. Keshava Kashmiri, the Digbijai Pandit, was going from village to village, establishing himself as the greatest scholar, and Nadia was a place of learning. Due to the underhandedness of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who had gone to Mithila to learn the Navanyaya as a resident of Navadvip, and to bring that knowledge back there and represent it. But they wouldn't give him the book. The book was not allowed to leave Mithila. So he memorized the book, brought it back, and wrote it again, and then his student, Raghunandana, became the greatest Pandit of the Navanyaya. You know the story. He had written a book with a view to become the greatest scholar, and he happened to be crossing the Ganga one day in a boat with Nimai Pandit. So he offered his book to Nimai Pandit and said, could you please read it and let me know what you think? And Mahaprabhu said, yes, I'd be happy to. And in fact, I've written a book also. Could you read it, look it over, and it's a short book, but let me know what you think. So they're reading one another's books as the boat plies across the Ganga, in the Ganga Delta there, where the Ganga meets the ocean. Very beautiful setting. And as they're reading, Raghunanda begins to weep. Mahaprabhu says, why are you weeping? He says, because I wanted to be known as the greatest scholar in all of India. And I had written my book with that in mind. But when I read your book, I see that I'm a student at best. I have no chance. And Mahaprabhu said, oh, well, give me back that book. So he handed it back, and Mahaprabhu threw it in the Ganga. And Raghunandan became famous for his knowledge. This is what Mahaprabhu thought of knowledge unto itself. So he had a reputation. He defeated the Keshav Kashmiri when he came. All the learned Pandits, elderly as they were, all left town when the Digvijay came. And they thought, this Nimai Pandit, he's a scholar, but he's only a boy, so he will be the only Pandit left. So the Digvijay will have to debate with him, and if Nimai Pandit loses, then we'll say, anyway, you only debated with a boy in our village. We just happened to be out of town on that day. And of course, if the boy defeats him, what'll be the fame of Nadia then, as a place of learning? And of course, the story is nicely told in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Keshav Kashmiri was defeated and astounded at the knowledge of Nimai Pandit. So, Ishwar Puri offered him his book to look over. And Mahaprabhu said, this book, different than Raghunandan's book, or different than the poetry of the Digvijay Pandit, which was 100 spontaneous verses in glorification of the Ganges, that it just came out like that in Sanskrit poetry. That's how learned the Digvijay Pandit Keshav Kashmiri was. That's incredible. Say something about the Ganges. There was Nimai Pandit, along with his friends on the bank of the Ganga, having their class. Nimai Pandit as the teacher. It's a very beautiful setting, Vrindavan Das, reflecting upon, pines for the opportunity to take birth again at that time that he came in this life just afterwards. He said to you, how can I describe the setting of Nimai Pandit sitting with the students along the bank of the Ganga? He can't be compared to Bhrigu, who's the guru of the gods, because the Bhrigu is biased towards the gods, and Nimai Pandit is unbiased. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's an unbiased person entirely. What else did he say? He cannot be compared to a couple other things he came up with, I forget at the moment. But if there's one thing I can think of to compare him to that may be apt and appropriate, that is Jamuna Puline along the bank of the Ganga, and a picnic lunch. After killing Aghasura, Krishna sat with his friends. And this vision of Nimai Pandit with his friends along the bank, I think it's comparable. He's saying the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Govinda himself. So, at any rate, Ishwar Puri offered him the book, and Mahaprabhu said, this is a book by a devotee. It is a book about Krishna. You're asking me to check it for any faults, but there cannot be any faults in such a book. Because the sincere effort to glorify Krishna, he thought, is faultless. There may be some technical points to that. It should be correct in terms of tattva. There should not be any conflicting with aesthetic sensibilities that, for example, the rasa, the lila, falls within the parameters of. That's why when sometimes poetry was offered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Puri through Swarup Damodar would check it, if it is correct in tattva, if it is correct in terms of aesthetic sensibilities, rasa tattva, then it would be offered to Mahaprabhu. If not, it would be handed back with correct this, correct that, something like that. But Ishwar Puri, of course, was a great devotee of very high stature. And Mahaprabhu replied in this way. And we also may think of it like this, because Madam Mohan asked the other day, well, one thing about preaching, what if we make, how qualified do we have to be? What if we make a mistake in what we're preaching? I think he said something like that. One time I was sitting with Prabhupada in Vrindavan. I had heard that Prabhupada was going to cook that day for himself. So I thought, I'm going to go and I'm going to watch him cook, or help him cook. That'd be a very extraordinary event. Typically he wouldn't cook for himself, although he was a very good cook. And previously, I was a sannyasi at the time. Previously, I had the opportunity to taste Prabhupada's cooking. When two sannyasis, Yashodanandan Maharaj and Guru Kripa Maharaj, came to America for the first time after having been in India for years. And they came to Los Angeles, and I was there. I was well known as a brahmachari for my participation in Sankirtan. And they were quite a couple of characters, these two godbrothers of mine. And they brought the songs of Bhakti Vinod really to the Americas. And they would sing Udilaruna Purava Bhage Vijamani Gaura Mani Jage Jiv Jago Gaura Chanda Bole. All these songs of Bhakti Vinod. So moving. And so Prabhupada came when they were there during that time. And so they were bringing something very wonderful, and then Prabhupada came also with a very surcharged spiritual atmosphere. After Prabhupada would greet the deities, in Los Angeles he would greet the deities, each altar he would bow down, and then he would come across and turn back, head towards his Vyasasana. We had a huge picture of Bhagavan Narahari Nrsingadev tearing apart Hiranyakasipu and offer his respect to that. Then he would sit on his Vyasasana, and then he would chant Radha Madhava, Jai Radha Madhava, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song, and then give Bhagavatam recitation. And after that, well, actually, I should say, after some time, his singing was preceded by an artik. There's another story how the artik, the Guru Puja began, and Narottam Thakur's song, Shri Guru Charana Padma, we would sing. When I first came, we weren't doing that. That was instituted a little later on. But at any rate, he would give the Bhagavatam class, and after the Bhagavatam class, then there would be a short kirtan. So, these two, Yashodananda and Guru Kripa, they were quite famous for their kirtan. It was quite electrifying. And so it was kind of expected that they would lead the kirtan. And Sudama Maharaj was there. He was also well known for his kirtan. There was a little struggle who would lead the kirtan. And Prabhupada stopped him and said, "Let this boy sing." So Prabhupada had me sing instead. And everybody looked at me. It was very kind of him. I had been... I was thinking certain things during the chanting of the Jai Radha Madhava, and pouring my heart out to Prabhupada. And I used to stand next to Prabhupada's Vyasasana, so he'd play the kartals, very magically, the way he would spring his hand like this. He'd spring I used to meditate on his hand, his gestures. Like this, with open hand. I was just mystified by his movements and features, such extraordinary bodily features. I mean, it just not of this world. He really is. He's so short and so tall. He's shorter than me. Right? He's like 5'4" or something like that, maybe 5'6", but he had he felt like he was such a tall person with his eyes just looking out into such a vision. And his ears and everything about it. It's very, very beautiful. Sudurlabha Bhagavata Ilok, such a person, very difficult to find. And so, and I was thinking, he loves this. He has such feeling for these words, Jai Radha Madhava and so forth. So I want to respond when the time comes in the kirtan, just in a way as if to say, I don't understand the implication of these words. But he loves them and knows them, and so let me chant them just for his pleasure, just to please him, because they're so pleasing to him. They're not that pleasing to me, but he's pleasing to me. I find my Krishna in him. So let me chant in such a way, just to please him. And while he was doing it, he looked over at me like this, of course. He felt me. And then afterwards he said, let this boy sing. And he did that for like 2-3 mornings in a row. Let this boy sing. So I was already a little well known for my Sankirtan. But this Guru Kripa and Yashodanandan, they were like checking me out. You have to know them, what they were like. And so anyway, Prabhupada had cooked there in Los Angeles, apparently. I wasn't aware of that. And they had the samosas that he cooked. So they called me in one day, one morning, and they said, we're going to give you something. We like you. That's what they were like. And so they opened their package and then they gave me a little piece of samosa. Prabhupada cooked this with his own hands. We're keeping it with us wherever we go. We're going to give you some. Something like that. So I had to taste Prabhupada's cooking. So then they said, you probably don't get any samosas around here. And I said, well, actually I do, because they had a competition in New Dwarka at that time. It was orchestrated by my godbrother Rameswar. When I came to New Dwarka, I had been involved for 3 months. I had joined a traveling Sankirtan party in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And when Prabhupada came to Los Angeles, and they brought me down there to meet Prabhupada. And he gave me initiation. And so I had no education, or I had no resume of work. Had no work, and I had dropped out of school and whatnot for several years and so forth. So I didn't really have any skills, so to speak. And I looked at all the devotees. I thought they're so talented. All of them. What do I do? What can I do? So I had been in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I had been going out on Kirtan, and I like to talk to people about the books. We had Back to Godhead, some small books. We had the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So one of the devotees in the group, they were brahmacharis. I was married. My wife was pregnant. We joined the traveling Sankirtan party. That's what was going on in those days. So anyway, I would go out and talk to people and pass out the Back to Godhead magazine and get donations and so forth. And one of the brahmacharis said, you should sell the big books. You should sell some big books. The big book we had was the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada used to say it's the only book I've written. The rest of them were all commentaries, although he had written some smaller books as well. So I thought, how do you distribute it? How do you sell a big book like this? It's one thing to give him a magazine and ask for 50 cents or a quarter. I think they cost a quarter at the time, so a quarter. But this is a big book, a hardbound book, so forth. And he said, you just pray to Prabhupada. And I thought, well, that was a good answer. That made sense, I thought. It made a lot of sense. And so that I did. I went to bed, I prayed to Prabhupada. They're telling me I should sell a big book, so I guess I should do that. I had been living in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and really getting off target here, but it's interesting to you, I think. So I'd been living in the Santa Cruz Mountains and with another guy and my wife, and I had shaved my head, and someone had given me a Krishna book somewhere on the streets. So I used to read from the Krishna book and lead kirtan, and I would preach from it. So I didn't know how to join the devotees. I got the mantra on the back of a pack of incense, and it was said, chant this mantra and your life would be sublime. So I thought, that sounds good. And so I was living there, and I shaved my head. I thought you're supposed to shave your head, so shaved my head. And then the guy I was living with, he was a gay fellow, real tall guy, and had this really long, beautiful black hair. And he used to keep an orange sheet in his closet or whatever, in his bag. And whenever the devotees were around and he was and he put it on, he would go out and dance around with them. So he came and he saw I had shaved my head. He said, I got something for you. You need this more than me. And he gave me the orange sheet. So I was wearing the orange sheet. He eventually became a devotee also. Several people, friends I knew, were living in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and they joined. In fact, recently I just had the opportunity to reconnect with a friend of mine that I had driven for the first time in an old Volvo to California. And we were living in San Francisco, and then we went down to Santa Cruz to get out of the city. And we were living in the Santa Cruz Mountains there. And so he was there when I joined and so forth. And I recently connected with him on Facebook. And he said, I think about you all the time. He said, are you still a Krishna? He said, you really did it. Like, wow, you're Swami now. And like, and it was an example of how, as I was saying the other day, if you were in the alternative culture, and in the context of that, you joined like a guru in a mission, you like really went out there. You really dropped out. You really went the full, distance, so to speak. The hippie scene was kind of like in between. You had left, you had dropped out, tuned in and turned on, as they used to say, but to what? To like, we're not for what we've left, and we want some love and peace. How we get that? I'm not sure. It was kind of like nebulous. So anyway, to have joined an ashram, that was like, wow. So he confirmed that to me. They said, wow, you were really the one. Who would have known? Yeah. He didn't become a devotee apparently, but some of the others I knew also did. So at any rate, when the devotees came to Santa Cruz, they were told when they were doing Santa Kirtan in the street, there's a guy up in the mountains there, he dresses like you and he chants like that, and he teaches from those books. Can't imagine what my classes were like at the time. So they immediately came up there and told me I was doing it all wrong, and I couldn't wear that color because I was married, and I had to wear another color. So I moved down to Santa Cruz, to the city, out of the mountains with them, and there we were. So I'd go out every day and share the books and talk about them. So when I came, they brought me to Los Angeles. I thought I can't do anything else really. I have no education, or background, or skills. So I know how to do this. It may not be important, but I'll do it. So I used to go out and sell the books, and then I saw one day on on the bulletin board that they had put up a competition for selling the books. And I thought, wow, maybe that's cool. Maybe I entered that. See, so then I won. There was only like a couple other people who went out full time. Most of the devotees who were households worked in the incense business there, the spiritual sky, and there were the temple devotees, and nobody knew how to sell the books. Not very much. It was like we had this warehouse full of books, and so I just had a penchant for talking to people about Krishna, whatever I knew. So I won the competition, and the competition was the winner would get Radha and Krishna's Sunday feast plate, the entire Maha plate. So I won that plate, and I would eat every morsel of it, every morsel. Actually, then they changed the competition that you could win. I think it was like Gornip Thai's lunch plate every day, or then you could win the Sunday Rukmini and Dwarkadish plate, something like that. Ramaswar was pretty creative. So I began to win every day. So I would go out, I would take the bus to Hollywood. That's where I would sell books, in Hollywood. Went out with cartels, and I would do kirtan for like half an hour, and then I would walk them down the street and sell the books, and then I'd come and do kirtan again, and I'd go out and sell the book and do more kirtan like that. That was my system. And but then when I started winning the lunch plate every day, I was thinking, my power to do this is coming from the prasadam. So I thought, my power is coming from that. So I have to come back every day at midday to take lunch and eat. I think I was getting the Jagannath's plate or something like that, or Gornitai. So I would eat every, bit, and then I would go back out locally, nearby, at some shopping center or something like that. That was my system. So I would very much cherish that plate. And then after a while, of every day, I was thinking, this came to me very naturally. I was thinking, I'm eating this whole plate, but actually prasadam is mercy. So I'm eating mercy, but I don't have any mercy, because I'm not letting anybody else eat any of the plate. So I should actually be giving this plate to others. So then I used to come back and I would get the plate and then I would give it to all the devotees. And then I'll tell you this, I never told this thing, but then I would wait till everybody finished their lunch. And then we used to eat like out on the lawn and around, and so then I would go out and whatever prasadam had fallen anywhere, I would pick all that prasadam up. Chaitanya Charitamrita wasn't published or anything like that. It wasn't like I was imitating Raghunath Das. But I thought prasadam. I had great faith in Mahaprasadam. And I was thinking it was actually inoculating me from the world to be able to go out there and deal with it and not be distracted. So I used to collect all of that, and that's what I would eat. And then, of course, there wasn't much of that, so I had a plate also of rice and dal, whatever was offered that day. That was my system. So they thought, you're just a brahmachari, you probably don't get some roses. Well, I have a fair share. but one cooked by Prabhupada, yes, I relish that. So anyway, I had the opportunity to taste prasadam cooked by Prabhupada. So when I heard in Vrindavan that Prabhupada was cooking that day, by this time I was this young sannyasi, I had just taken sannyas, that it would have been probably the year before, so it was probably 1976, so I showered and went down all clean to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was taking massage. And I said, Prabhupada, I came because I heard that you were going to be cooking for yourself, so I wanted to come and participate in that. And he kind of chuckled at me. He would laugh at me quite a bit. So I was probably pretty foolish looking to him. And I remember once when he came to Los Angeles, and it was probably around the same year I had taken sannyas, and I took sannyas in 1975, and I paid my obeisance at his feet, and he looked like, "Who is that?" And I looked up, and he just started laughing when he seen me. He just laugh. It happened quite a bit. So, and so anyway, he chuckled and he said, "No," he said, "they're cooking. Well, they're nicely. Why should I cook? But I can cook." He said, "I can cook for myself. I can cook with wood," he said. I mean, like on a wood stove. So he began to talk to me about how he was self-sufficient. He could cook like in the forest without any, and I was a young sannyasi, so I think he was talking to me about the self-sufficiency of sannyas and so forth. And so I have a godbrother named Gopavrinapal who was also a book distributor. So he happened to be there, and he heard that I was somehow somebody was, maybe the person who was massaging Prabhupada went out and said Tripurari was talking to Prabhupada and talking about, so he thought I was talking about book distribution, because that was what my service was. And he was a book distributor, so he thought maybe he could sneak in there and have a word or something like that. And he had this idea that it's a problem that devotees are going out and they're speaking, but they don't know the philosophy that well, so they may say something wrong. Therefore, we should train them exactly what to say, so that they won't make any mistakes. So he came, and Prabhupada acknowledged him, and then he said, "Prabhupada, I had this thought, and this is the situation," and so forth. So the conversation turned to his idea that the devotees should, before going out, they should be trained exactly what to say and what not to say. But Prabhupada didn't like the idea. He said, "No." He said, "Preaching is spontaneous." He said, just like Tripurari Maharaj. Krishna is speaking to him in his heart, and then he repeats that to the people, and he's selling the books. Sometimes Prabhupada would hear some of the things I would say, like when the first newspaper articles started coming out about energy crisis, which is the kind of the big early beginnings of the environmental movement, energy crisis. Then that was in the paper. And Prabhupada would be up on the news, and then he would take something from the news and talk about it and explain the philosophy relative to the point, trying to be contemporary in his presentation, like you can see in his early Back to Godhead, when he was publishing the Back to Godhead by himself, writing it, editing it, proofreading it, publishing it, designing it, so forth. So he didn't like that idea. He said, "Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam zamenam mamupayantite." This is the first Bhagavad Gita verse I ever learned, by the way. So very nice to hear Prabhupada chant it. And he said, he quoted this verse to say, Tripurari Maharaj, Krishna's Dadami Buddhi, he gives him knowledge in the heart, and then he speaks that. And Prabhupada would hear, Prabhupada would hear some of the things I would say, like during the energy crisis, we had a book that was recently published at that time called Krishna, Reservoir of Pleasure. So I used to hand it out and say, "Have you heard about the energy crisis?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Take this. This is the reservoir, of pleasure and whatever." And I had something about it, and then, so energy crisis can be solved here, That was my line. So Prabhupada heard it. Somehow he would hear, through the chain of whatever, and then sometimes he would repeat that. And what is he saying, that boy? And they would chuckle. They say, "Tripurari." "Yes." And he's saying, "There is no energy crisis here." He liked those kind of things. Once in Berkeley on a morning walk, I wasn't there, but I heard the tape. One devotee asked, "But Prabhupada, I had an idea that if we make Bengali sweets and sell them, they will be very popular. Then we can make money to sustain ourselves for the mission." And Prabhupada said, "What is that boy's name?" Somebody knew enough to say, "Tripurari." He said, "Yes, he is selling the Bengali sweets." Chaitanya Charitamrita. We will maintain ourselves in this way. Prabhupada said when he crossed the ocean that he was living on Chaitanya Charitamrita. This book was nourishing him, keeping him alive, keeping his heart beating as he traveled into the unknown. You have to understand what that getting on that boat was like. Do you want to try out, what is his name, Musk? The guy with the Tesla cars, Tesla? Elon Musk. He wants to sell tickets to outer space. That what it was like if you would get on one of those. Here we go. Prabhupada was like on the ocean. It was like, where am I going? It's like going to outer space. When he got to New York, he wrote back about it. He said, it's different here. There's so many lights on at night that it's like daytime. And everybody has a car. And everybody drives it. Because in India, only the rich people had cars, and they had drivers. It was like another planet for him. They all have cars. They all drive them. Lights on at night, or like make it like day. I mean, this is how he was like. He had gone to another planet with a trunk of books. We tell them about Goloka, from Bharat, from Braj within Bharat, which is another dimension, right? From another dimension he came. So, anyway, he told that devotee, Gopa Vrindapal, nice name, Gopa Vrindapal, the Pal of the Gopa Vrinda, the protector of the group of Govinda's Gopas. Govinda, the protector of his group, friends. Rakshikshatati Vishvashvo, as we said. Protected them as they marched into the mouth of Aghasura. So, anyway, Prabhupada said, no, with the devotees, you have to let them be individual and follow their individual inspiration. He wanted to encourage that. And then Gopa Vrindapal said, but Prabhupada, Tamal Krishnamar said that you gave all the devotees that they had to, when they went out, they had to collect a certain amount of money, so you regulated it in that way. And Prabhupada, I have never said that. That is Tamal Krishna's concoction. Just as an aside there. So his idea was that they would go out and they would have it chanted all morning. They would be inspired. That's what I used to do in Los Angeles. After the morning program, then I would go before the deities and I would chant until I got inspired. Till I got so absorbed that I began to move in bliss rather than by any other motive. Then I would go out. That was my system. And so Prabhupada kind of looked at us like that. They're going out in bliss and they're saying something. It may not be perfect, but the heart it's coming from, the intention is perfect, and they might say it a little wrong, but they're giving the perfect book. So, no harm. It's made up for. So this was his spirit. And again, he had a sense of urgency, so he placed a lot of trust in us, let them go. And sometimes the trust was violated and we did things that ended up being not approved by him, but he was very, very generous with us. And he didn't stop trusting us. He didn't really have a choice. So this is the early beginnings of the international dispensation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's divine precepts. And so Ishwar Puri, there he was in the house of Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu said, check out my book. First thing Mahaprabhu said, well, really there can't be any fault in a book written by a devotee like you. And he insisted, no, keep it and keep reading it, please find it. So later Mahaprabhu found something, what was it, incorrect verb or something like that. And so he brought it up to him. He said, "Yeah, if you want some minor thing, I found it." And then Ishwar Puri said, "Oh," and he looked at it and he meditated on it. And then he looked at it very carefully overnight. He said, "Actually, I was right what I said here. Nimai Pandit was wrong." So he went back to Nimai Pandit and said, "I'm right and you were wrong." And Nimai Pandit was very pleased to be corrected by his guru. The only one who ever corrected Nimai Pandit. In everybody else, no one could defeat him. It was his guru. There he accepted defeat. So, long segue here. But what I was saying is that rasa, rati, sometimes say Madhurya rati, Sakya rati. The word Sakya rati, Madhurya rati applies both to the budding stage of rati and the mature stage of rati, which is sometimes the latter, which is sometimes referred to as rasa. So sometimes the word Sakya rati will be referring to the bhava stage, sometimes it may be employed to be referring to prema. But at any rate, rati, prema is constituted of rati. Rati is thought to be unto itself a ray of the sun of prema. And bhakti rasa comes from that. So bhakti rasa doesn't come from poetry. The secular aestheticians, like Bard Muni, the original in India, later Vishwanath and Sahitya Darpan, not Vishwanath Chakravarti, but these are, as I say, secular authors. But again, it's hard to really call them secular because they had their own religious conception. Bard's idea was that through the arts, we are displaced by participating in them from our everyday life. By way of being catapulted into the drama, into the song, into the poetry itself, and experiencing the emotions therein. And that displacement is something like Shanta, something like Brahman. So he thought of it as a kind of a tool, something like that. But of course it's not a theory of bhakti rasa, but how the arts might facilitate us in giving us like an altered perspective and opening us to, I'm not an expert on this theory, but transcendence, of course, Rupa Goswami taken the terms from these, so he's not entirely secular is what I want to say, but he's not writing about bhakti rasa. So the rasa that he's talking about is secular poetry. And in secular poetry, the poetry itself gives rise to rasa. Rasa is like the soul of the poetry, right? So when the bhavas combine together, the vibhav, the sattvika, the sthayi bhav, the vibhav, the sanchari bhav, and so forth, when these all combine together, they arise out of the sthayi bhav like water in the ocean arises and turns into a cloud, and then that water pours down again on the sthayi bhav in the form of the vibhav, sattvika bhavs, sanchari bhavs, anubhavs, and so forth. It's those technical terms, and you may not understand them thoroughly. I've written about them and explained them at some length in the book that we're supposed to be reading from this morning. As a composite, then, these turn rati into rasa. And so, poetry does not give rise to rasa. You don't have to be a poet or a person of the arts to taste bhakti rasa. What did Mahaprabhu say in this regard?
What use is poetry if it doesn't make the head spin? What use is poetry if it doesn't make the head spin?
I think a verse of Rupa Goswami. No, that's not it. What? That's right. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va. I'm not, is ruchi bhakti, shuddha bhakti. The higher stages of sadhana, where desires, longings, within sadhana is starting to become prominent. Anyway, then it's defined in Shikshastakam in a negative way. Not this, not this, not this. I don't desire the world. And the world means fame, najanam, wealth, nadanam, nasundarim, romantic companionship, for example, sundarim, and kavitam. Kavita means poetry. So he means neither the arts. This is somewhat removed, refined, sattvic sensibilities. If you want to go and listen to classical music, it's not like hip-hop. What kind of adhikar do you need to like hip-hop? You need a good dose of tamaguna, probably. Get into it. But it's classical music, it's like boring or weird unless you've got the adhikar for that. Refined, sattvic personality, somewhat removed from the herd, right? If humanity is moving away from animality, and this is far removed, sophisticated, cultured, educated, refined, sattvic sensibilities. And Mahaprabhu says, kavitam va. That won't get you bhakti rasa. You can't by becoming a poet, you can't get my rasa. No. Not like that. But by rati you can get rasa. Rasa comes from rati. But the nature of this rasa is such that it can take poetry and turn it into something by which you can get rati. It can spiritualize the poetry. It can take the language of poetry, which is most suitable for speaking about rasa, because it's a world of all possibilities. In poetry we can use that kind of language. As I sometimes say, the moon can have wings and fly across the sky in poetry. You have to understand, this is just a different way of looking at the world. It's as real. Niels Bohr, the famous, I think it was Niels Bohr, famous Nobel laureate physicist, he said, the religious stories and myths and poetry and so forth, they are not unreal or less real than our scientific pronouncements. They are ways of speaking about things that our scientific method cannot grasp. There are things beyond words, beyond observation. What about that? Beyond the limits of the senses, beyond the limits of our intellectual ability to reason about empirical observations and reach conclusions. With that, we cannot reach a conclusion that will fully satisfy us. That means we can't reach comprehensive knowing. Comprehensive knowing is that knowing by which I know I don't need to know anything else. A noetic bliss. A knowing, a bliss that is wise. It's hladini and samvit, a wise kind of knowing. A wise kind of loving, I should say. Wise love. And so, who has rati, where do you get rati from? Someone who has rati. That means from Guru Parampara. So then that if we want to speak about that, our Goswamis have spoken about that. They've written about that. And when writing directly about it, when writing philosophically about it, and they want to write in prose and philosophically, Rupa Goswami's done that in Bhakti Rasamrita. And of course, it's peppered with poetry, pramanas, and so forth. And then Leela Granta books, which is like the second canto of this book, is like retelling the narrative of the Prakat Leela of the Sakyarasa center of the Bhagavatam. So when they wrote books like this, then they were all in poetry. So they employed this language, and that language then becomes empowered with rati. Then that poetry can be an aid to our attaining and tasting rati and bhakti rasa. Therefore, we should not. Therefore, if we do want to write poetry about Krishna, it should have some tattva and proper understanding, and so that it will, and becoming such that it will have power. Power. It's not just sit down and with your material emotions and sensibilities write a poem. I mean, you can start somewhere, but the poetry of the Goswamis, this is rich, empowered poetry. It doesn't say everything about, you can't say everything about what is Vatsalya rasa, what is Madhurya rasa, what is Sakya rasa. It defies words. You cannot put it in words, but whatever words it is put in, by some experience of that poetry will be empowered. So, and we should understand, of course, by extension, what to speak of having the ability, rati, to transform poetry into a vehicle for its dissemination and its nourishment, to nourish one's own rati, to express it in poetry. That poetry will nourish the rati. What to speak of being able to do that with poetry? Rati can do that with the whole world. The rasa can do that with the whole world. We can say, these are the udipana vibhavs of Madhurya rasa. These are the udipana vibhavs of Sakya rasa. So as listed by Rupa Goswami, for example. And then we can explain about that, we can explore them, and so on. Krishna's flute, his ages, his age, for example, of Poganda, boyhood, is an udipana for Sakyarasa. Actually, all the ages are, because the Sakyarasa center begins with the end of the Sesh Kumar and extends into the beginning of Madhuri, which starts to begin at the end of Poganda. But anyway, the age is an udipana. And other things listed for the different rasas and so forth. But what is an udipana then? We're talking about udipana vibhav. It causes the rati to flourish. It has a causal kind of effect, right? The qualities of Krishna are udipana vibhavs, and as I said the other day, certain qualities for certain rasas and so forth will be more prominent, serve in that capacity. But what does it mean? It means there'll be a tipping point. So a tipping point in hearing can take a devotee to tip to the other side, and from external consciousness and orientation, go to the other side, come back. But Mahaprabhu was so absorbed in Krishna Rati that the whole natural world became udipana for him. The cloud became udipana for him. The sand dune in Jagannath Puri became Govardhan Hill. Any body of water became the Jamuna. And he would jump in. He converted the whole world into that which would give rise to rasa. This is the super extraordinary power of bhakti rasa. It's inconceivable. How to do away with the problem of the world. Convert it. Vishvam purnam sukhayate. You can't do that with gyan or with yoga. That's like, forget it. You're hiding from the world there. Look only at the tip of your nose, nowhere else. Once I was sitting with Prabhupada, if you don't mind, in the 11th floor of the building in Manhattan. This was a big victory for Prabhupada, right? Because he came and he was, first in New York, he was living on the street as a homeless person. And in the end, he had a small, but nonetheless, something was scraping the sky, right? A skyscraper. 11th-story building in Manhattan. So it was newly acquired, and I was sitting there with Prabhupada. It was recently, I had taken sannyas also. And Prabhupada, I was sitting alone with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada turned to me and he said, "Have you seen the New York women?" I didn't know what he was thinking, what I was supposed to answer. Have I seen the New York women? I guess I should say no. But I just didn't know what to say, so I just didn't say anything. Then Prabhupada said, "They're so beautiful." Then he just began talking about New York women, how beautiful they were. And as he went on and on and on, he said, and then the men are so attracted to them. And this way, he said, and that way the buildings are going up and scraping the sky. So he was saying the skyscrapers are being built by the attractive women who are captivating the men, and then they're working. I mean, because women weren't as much in the workplace at that time. And so, and then he said at the end, he said, "This is Vishnu Maya," and his eyes were so big. And he was, Vishnu Maya. It's so fascinating. It was so charming how he was looking at the world. So the devotee is not running away from the world. He's seeing Vishvam Purnam Sukhayat, turning everything into impetus for furthering one's bhakti. So at any rate, the poetry of, we don't, these are abstract terms to us, vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav. You might think, wow, to learn all this, and how do I do that, and what is it exactly? So if you study these things carefully under good guidance, you see that they're very easily understood because they're very much pertain to the human psychology, and we're all humans. And so anyway, I've written about this to some extent to help us understand the concepts. I won't go into it here, but some might question at the onset, do I have to learn all these terms and be a big poet and a Sanskritist to taste rasa? No, the answer is, Rupa Goswami says, no, you don't. But then again, let us say you want to watch a movie. So every person who watches a movie may get something out of it, may be transported, weep, laugh, become frightened in their seat, and so forth, through the movie, right? This is what's supposed to happen to you when you read the drama of Krishna Lila. You're supposed to feel the feelings of those who are feeling them. So the idea to write in such a way, as the Goswami says, is to bring out the feelings. This is what the Bhagavatam does, that other Puranas don't do, when they just list, this Lila happened, this Lila happened, this Lila happened, this Lila happened. Something like that. Bhagavatam's different. It wants to tell the feeling. And it's so, Sukadeva is so absorbed in trying to share the feeling, that he doesn't list all the names. Who are all the gopis? Radha is not even overtly mentioned. You think, well, her name is mentioned in the Vishnu Purana, that must be more important. No, you can't get the feelings of Radha Dasyam from Vishnu Purana. From Bhagavatam you can get them. So, no, you don't have to be a poet, but then again, if you study dramatic arts, film, and then you went to the movie, you might see things other people don't see. You might be able to enter into it a little bit more. So we shouldn't shy away from something that's a little bit intellectually challenging. If you don't challenge your intellect with bhakti, your mind will challenge it, your senses will challenge it, to work for them, to scheme for them, for their demands. Mahaprabhu in his dispensation is making demand upon us to understand his dispensation. As much as you have intellect, apply it in this way. So, and you do that, then you become a real a qualified person to speak about Krishna, to share. So maybe I'll read from it tonight a little bit. Something from this poetic, beginning of the poetic section. Are there any questions? I got a little distracted, so forgive me.
I have two questions from Padmanabha Maharaj.
I don't think I want to entertain separate questions from the kind of what we've been talking about at this moment. Yes?
I have a question regarding Nimai as a Pandit.
Yes.
If he was so great Pandit, why his guru said to him that he is fool and he should not study the Vedanta? Or it was just Lord Chaitanya saying this to show that in Kali Yuga there is no need for studying Vedanta and only chanting. It was really happened that his guru told him that he's fool? And
Yes. Told him he was a fool. That's what he says.
Aha, po polsku. Ja mam pytanie odnośnie kwestii Nimaya jako pandita. Skoro był tak wielkim panditą, dlaczego jego guru Shvarapuri powiedział mu, że jest głupcem i że nie powinien studiować Vedanty? Czy to naprawdę się wydarzyło, czy po prostu Pan Chaitanya tylko tak mówił, żeby wskazać na to, że w Kali Yudze nie ma potrzeby studiowania Vedanta, a jedynie intonować?
Yes, Nimai Pandit was very learned. He says through the pen of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that my guru considered me a fool. And I think he's speaking to Prakashananda Saraswati in this section. Prakashananda Saraswati was a Vedantin of great measure, and Mahaprabhu was in the process of converting him from a dry Vedantist to a Rasik Bhakta, to a Rasika. Indeed, Prakashananda Saraswati misunderstood Mahaprabhu and said, he is a babuka, a sentimentalist, a babuka. Although he's a Bharati, he's from the Bharati community, one of our communities, sannyas communities, the Bharat lineage, because he was initiated by Keshava Bharati, in the Bharati lineage, but he's actually conducting himself like a babuka, a sentimentalist. Not appropriate. But you can tell he's still attracted to him. Of course, the Bhagavatam says, Negama kalpataro galitam phalam sukumukadamrta drabha samhitam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi babuka. Says you have to be a babuka to understand the rasa of Srimad Bhagavatam. You have to be a sentimentalist. Bengalis are well suited for that. Wonder Mahaprabhu appeared amongst them. They're like the Latins of the Hindu sector. So Mahaprabhu told in humility, which very much contrasts the pride that he saw in the Advaitins. And he said, my guru told me I'm a fool, and I shouldn't study Vedanta. Instead, he just gave me this mantra of Krishna Nam, and I'm chanting that, and this is what happens to me. I roll on the ground, I weep, I do all these babuga type things. Like I said, if you're in bhava, then You can act in any way. So he cited a verse from Bhagavatam. This mantra made him roll on the ground and not care for others, what they think, and weep and call out and so forth. It had magical powers on him. So Mahaprabhu is contrasting the jnana with bhakti and employing the term Vedanta to the Vedantists. And saying, this is not the way, who just study Vedanta, which is their way. Study the Vedanta, penetrate on the significance, the koans, tattvamasi, aham brahmasmi, neti neti, until you get an epiphany and so forth, and melt the constructs of the mind and so forth. This way you eradicate karma through sadhana, through jnana. So this is not the way of Mahaprabhu. So in one sense he's referring to them. My guru said, don't be a Vedantist. Mahaprabhu's punditry was before he was a Vaishnava or a Vedantist or anything. He was a learned person. But with regard to the actual spiritual path, he's saying that we should be a devotee, not a jnani, something like that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't become learned in sambandha jnana, the knowledge of bhakti. So there's knowledge, for example, of the difference between Atma and Brahman, or the likeness, the sameness between Atma and Brahman. This is the knowledge that the Jnani Vedantins are preoccupied with. The oneness, the likeness between Brahman and Atma. They're so much concerned with the likeness that they think there's no difference at all. Anyway, that's another point, but that's not the only kind of knowledge. That's real knowledge compared to just knowing things about the material world. If you don't know yourself, what do you know? You're a fool. But with regard to spiritual knowledge, the sambandha jnana, the knowledge of Bhagwan and his Shaktis, that is superior to simply the knowledge that constitutes the likeness between Brahman and Atman. Right? So that's what he's talking about there. But let me tell you an anecdote to appreciate the point. I was once listening to Bhakti Sundar Govinda Maharaj give a lecture, and he was lecturing on this section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. We were referred to it, and he said, Mahaprabhu said that my guru told me not to study Vedanta. I'm a fool. I should just chant Hare Krishna. So he was going on and on about this. You don't have to study Vedanta, not about that. Just chant the holy name, this is the thing. So he's going on and speaking about this at some length. And I'm listening to him. And when he's saying it, he's quoting all these verses to support his point. From Chaitanya Charitamrita, from Chaitanya Bhagavan. I thought, oh, he knows quite a few verses here. He's making a point. You don't have to be learned. And he's pretty learned. So I had a chuckle. But yes, chanting the holy name is the end of knowledge. So we do want to cultivate the sambandha jnana, knowledge of bhakti. I mean, who is Bhagawan? What are his different forms? So this is, all part of the knowledge that begets the bhakti arises in the context of. All right, so that's good enough, I think, for this morning. Nice to sit with you all. Bhakti Rasa ki jai, Sri Sri Gauratananda ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaud Premanande.